You want to write a beginning such that the first sentence in your novel already captures the reader's attention. Your entire first chapter should be amazing, really, if you want people to read the remainder of the book, but here we're really going to focus on that first page. There's two main reasons to obsess over this. Number one, because this is a random reader's first introduction to you. Not just to the content of your story, but to your personal style and also your competency. They will judge you, so you want to make the perfect first impression. The second reason this is important is because what you say at the beginning is really going to signal how the following pages should be read. And this is difficult because you're not only trying to get the reader's attention, but you are trying to implicitly instruct them how to read what comes next. Is it going to be a comedy? Is it going to be horror? They're going to be making that call based on what you present to them. You could have an entire first page or first chapter that's read very differently, depending only on what you say in your opening. Think of it this way. On one hand, you have to introduce yourself to a complete stranger you know nothing about. And on the other, you need to successfully pitch your idea to them. Leaving aside all considerations regarding the content and style of your story, I'd say there's really three ways to go about opening it. Obviously, this is broad strokes. For method number one, I'd say it's starting with a high-intensity scene. This could be action, but it could also just be general conflict. This could be a spy being chased and running across rooftops, but it could also just be a general family argument. The point of this is that it's active. Things are already happening. The reader's just being dropped into it. Instead of risking starting off slow and possibly boring your reader as you build up to something big that's about to happen, you start with the big thing and you unwind from there. What I want to stress here is to always consider how your character's unique traits would set them apart in these scenarios. Dive into their personality, their skills, and their background to flesh this out. Consider, for example, that your character is fighting somebody else. How are they doing it? What are they using to their advantage? Their strength, their speed, their intelligence? What weapons or tools might they have on them? Also, are they aggressive? Are they defensive? Are they afraid? Are they brave? Are they shit-talking the enemy? I don't know. You're gonna have to figure this out based entirely off of your character. Think of the most essential traits that define them and build off of that. And conversely, if your characters engage in an argument, just ask yourself what that would look like. Are they going to be understanding, compassionate? Are they going to switch blame? Are they going to go my way or the highway? Are they going to appeal to reason, to emotion, to shared history, to morality? Are they going to be calm? Or are they just going to completely lose their shit? Asking these sorts of questions will help you write it a lot more authentically. Keep in mind, though, high intensity doesn't need to be an assassin fighting off 30 people. If you're afraid of bugs and you have a cockroach scurrying across your bedroom floor, that's pretty fucking high intensity. Again, think first with your character. Think of what sets them apart and what high intensity scenario would be realistic for them and would simultaneously bring out their most important traits. Just remember this. Think how, not why. There should be no convoluted things you need to explain. Think of very visceral events that are understandable by anybody at face value. Also, for the love of God, please do not go into your character's personal history on the first page of your book. For people to care about that, they need to be emotionally invested in your character first. Imagine, for example, that we start with a character getting dumped by her boyfriend. You do this by focusing on the way they're interacting, the way they're arguing or talking or whatever they're doing, not by going into their personal history, not by explaining how happy they used to be and how sad this is. The way I'd recommend you think about this is like those clips you find online that you can't look away from. Clips where people are doing very dumb shit for reasons unknown, acting really weird, or fighting in public like animals. You don't know why it's happening. You barely know what's going on. But your lizard brain is deeply engaged because somebody's about to get hurt or humiliated, or at the very least, there is a chance of that happening. This is how you want your readers to feel. They've stumbled upon something ongoing, they don't know what's going on, they're gonna figure it out, but for right now, they're just purely engaged. And now on to method number 2. Start with a telling statement or question. This can really be anything. It could be something that's plain weird, it could be super shocking, it could be incredibly epic, or you could just use it as an opportunity to set up a mystery. It could be a completely disorienting sentence exploring the beauty of collecting human eyeballs. Or it could be a paragraph explaining how the last king of a dynasty that ruled for 1,000 years just passed away, leaving the realm in chaos. Remember that this is not about being vague or philosophical or mysterious. It doesn't have to be that way at all. You are just trying to hook the reader and prime them accordingly for what they're about to read. Imagine, for example, opening up with the following. My neighbor lived in the apartment next to mine for his entire life, from the day he was born till the day they found his ashes. We have a hook, what happened to the neighbor, and the fact that we're talking about only his ashes being found does narrow this down to being either some kind of supernatural horror or maybe a crime thriller. Now, could you also use this method to subvert expectations and create a comedy? Of course you could. Also keep in mind, unless you're writing this from omniscient, that is, lacking a clear character perspective, then your opening statement or question should be representative of the character's headspace. Imagine you read this. How many bribes can you take before you stop being a cop and start becoming a criminal? In omniscient, this could be a question posed by the narrator to the audience. But in third person limited, this could just be an undercurrent in the turbulent headspace of the main character. Keep in mind that this is not the character explicitly asking this. It can be, but it doesn't need to be. You're just digging through their brain and trying to paint it. Method number 3. Immerse the reader. I would say this one is especially relevant if you're writing sci-fi, fantasy, or historical fiction. Sometimes people will pick up a book not because they're interested in the plot or the particular set of characters, but because they want to immerse themselves in a specific setting. So in this case, the details of what you're describing and the accuracy with which you do it matters way more than anything else. In this case, a banger of an opening paragraph that really sets the vibe is going to win the day. Remember that your goal here is to focus on the world, so try to grab some of the juiciest details from your setting, wrap them up in a nice opening, and offer that up to the reader. Now at this point you might be wondering, couldn't you just take every single method and piece together an opening that uses all three? The answer is, of course you can. For example, why don't the dead stay dead? A bleak horizon stretched as far as the eye could see, littered with decaying corpses that shuffled towards an unseen destination. They made their way through the once great capital of Theron, falling mindlessly into canals and getting stuck in tight alleyways. The wind carried an ominous howl, as if guiding the dead towards a grand event. Sarah hunched down, torch in hand, gazing at the dead that were advancing over the legendary bridge connecting the two sides of the sprawling city. "Don't do this," Eowyn begged quietly. She lifted her gaze to glance at him contemptuously. "You want to go flying with them, dumbass? I can make it happen." His fear drove him to take a step back. Smirking proudly, Sarah stood up and followed the line of gunpowder with her eyes as it spread out all the way to the bridge. Then, with a light click of her tongue, she dropped the torch. Now, is this the opening of a best-selling masterpiece? No, and fuck you, but it gives you somewhat of an idea. We have an opening question which sets the hook about the undead. We follow that up with a paragraph of description and not only lets the reader know this is a fantasy story, but builds upon that hook further. Not only have the dead risen, but they seem to have been raised by someone for some sinister, unknown purpose. We have a hook, we have the tone, we have a setting, now we just need a character. So we establish our character as combative and apparently familiar with explosives and just a quick conflict with somebody else. All of this, by the way, in just 152 words. That's not even half a page. And just imagine how good it would be if it was your story, your setting, your character. So to reiterate our three methods: 1. High intensity moment. 2. Statement or question. 3. By immersing the reader. Keep in mind, I am generalizing based off of my own experience, and nothing you hear here should be taken as a rule. Part of it is things I've learned personally by writing, and part of it is just advice I've heard in other places. So, ultimately, develop your own tastes and think for yourself. If you had an idea for how to open, which is different from all the ones I've talked about, that doesn't make it worse. It could be way fucking better. Just go crazy. Be creative. Be shocking. Be an asshole if you want to. Ultimately, all I've said could be summed up with start with a bang and just vibe. On a final note, I'll say this. Remember, this is not necessarily what you want to be doing if you're just starting out. Do not sit there for hundreds of hours thinking that you don't have the perfect opening paragraph, so there's no point in writing. The perfect start will come to you when you have the perfect ending. And to get to that finish line at all, you have to start where you can. I would advise not to think about this too much until you have a quasi-finished book. But hey, if you know your story inside out, but you just don't know where to start, maybe this will have helped out. Good luck, and trust your gut.